All right. Happy Saturday, everyone. Just want to make sure you can hear me. Can everybody hear me? All right. Just want to make sure out there in the world, y'all can hear me, can see me. Sorry, that kind of stuff, like making sure that everything is good to go. This thing's not working. Tech issues as per usual. But, oh, great. You can see me and hear me. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me on a Saturday. Not so lovely outside, at least here in Flint. My name is Melissa Mays, and welcome to this week's edition of In Flint, which is a show about what's going on in Flint. We'll touch on some national things from time to time, things that will have impacts on us in Flint, and also around the country and the world. So I don't know if you know Flint very well, but we have the ability to impact folks from all over. So I want to give a shout out to Urban News Station, who has helped me get together, and we got some cool studio stuff coming up, but also giving me a platform to be able to deliver community updates in my way. So, which sometimes can be a little saucy, but it's, to the point, fact-based, because this is what we're going through, and the world needs to know this is what Flint's going through right now. So yeah, and thank you, Dr. Weaver, for pushing me to do this. So if you don't like it, it's Dr. Weaver's fault. Just kidding. No, definitely. So again, my name is Melissa Mays. I founded, along with my husband, I founded What Are You Fighting For in January of 2015, which feels like a lifetime ago. We founded it as a portal of accurate information, so that way Flint residents would know what's going on, because there was so much misinformation or not any information. So we started working with Flint residents, folks like the irreplaceable Tony Palladino and Councilman Eric Mays. They've been with us since day one, since that first protest that my friend Jamie Marie put on in January of, I think it was like the 16th or something of 2015. And I went from being a music promoter and working with, my degrees are all in business management, promotions and marketing. So PR, not so much any of all this, which you'll hear me say. But when you and your family, your friends, neighbors, and loved ones get poisoned and folks are lying to you about it, you sometimes you shift gears a little bit. So, started What Are You Fighting For in 2015, and fought with a lot of amazing residents. So just throwing history out there, because a lot of history gets forgotten or, whitewashed, or, the media tells a different story because they don't know, or because they're shaping a narrative. But we basically started working with some of the concerned pastors for social action, like Pastor Hill and Pastor Harris and Reverend Overton, who then helped us form, along with Claire McClinton and Dr. Laura Sullivan and True Saunders. There's several of us that kind of started, forming together, Democracy Defense League of Flint, to form the Coalition for Clean Water. And this was basically as a way to see if we could legally or actively push for proper testing, which we ended up having to do ourselves for what was in our water. We already knew there was bacteria in the water. We found that out, in 2014 with E. coli. 2015, we had found out about the total trihalomethanes, which is cancer-causing disinfection byproducts. And then thanks to Aaron Brockovich and Bob Bocock, we started testing for lead and copper and other heavy metals, and found them being high and dangerous starting in February of 2015. And we started working with Kurt Guyette, an investigative reporter from the ACLU of Michigan, who was working on stories around Michigan about emergency management, which was former Governor Snyder's way to suspend local democracy and, privatize, sell off public assets of these cities like Detroit, Benton Harbor, Inkster school system, Detroit school system, the city of Detroit, and Flint, majority, minority, Black and brown communities, to sell off their public assets to make them go bankrupt. So then they'd be under state control and, for 30 years or so under state receivership, but also be able to be sold off to the wealthy friends of this former governor. So privatization kills. You'll hear me say that a lot. And, basically Flint was in line to follow Detroit's footsteps with the bankruptcy until we helped bust out that there was a water crisis. And then, focus shifted and people started actually looking into this law that was so horrific and allowed for the former governor to appoint an unelected official to run basically our entire local government. So you'll hear like back and forth and people misstating history saying, well, your local, mayor and city council voted to go to the Flint River. That's not true. That's not true at all. And even if they did, it would have just been, for show because they didn't have any actual power. Several appointed emergency managers, they superseded and they would be able to veto. So, without even a vote, anything that the local government had done. In March of 2015, our city government, our city council, who was always at each other's throats, actually voted unanimously to get off of the Flint River and go back to Detroit. Well, Snyder's emergency manager, Jerry Ambrose at that time, and Snyder, of course, had to be the one to make the decisions, along with Andy Dillon, who was of the Treasury, basically said it was inconceivable. Right. So it was too expensive for Flint to get clean water. And so basically it wouldn't have mattered what our local government voted for. And so we realized that we had, and our mayor at the time went along with it, said, well, there's nothing I can do. And that's not what local leadership should be. So we fought really hard to get actually Dr. Karen Weaver in office because the whole goal was to declare a public health emergency because this is a problem. We had proven over and over again that the water was not safe. We had received 300 test kits from Virginia Tech and returned 277 through all of the work that the Coalition for Clean Water and Flint residents did. We went and dropped off kits, helped people test. We held educational sessions at the churches that would let us. Not all the churches would let us in, but there were those that were focused on public health that would let us hold these educational sessions for residents about how to test their water. We talked about filters. We talked about safety precautions, and that proved there was a widespread lead problem. Still didn't matter. And nothing really happened until, Dr. Monahan Atisha looked at the lead levels that were already in the system at Hurley Hospital for kids on Medicaid that were aged about 2, is we usually walking age is when they was the standard lead test for kids. Because at that time, they were worried about kids having lead dust from lead paint and things like that and walking around and putting things in their mouth. They didn't think about infants drinking formula or breast milk that was full of lead from the water, especially for those of us who have kids who, were fortunate enough to not eat paint chips. So we had to fight against, and we still, by the way, are fighting against that misconception that the only way you're going to get lead is lead in paint and that lead in water isn't so bad. It's not how that works. I don't eat paint chips. Most of us don't eat paint chips. And we had already been working on the lead abatement, the Lead Safe Homes program. It had already existed to remove lead paint. So it was already going on. And we were able to improve it by adding water to the mix, at least for Flint. So anyway, long story short, we had lost our democracy and they switched our water to the Flint River that was, corrosive as it was, and then refused to treat it, right? They did not add corrosion control. We, in fact, and everybody talks about the $150 a day it would cost. We didn't even have the equipment in the plant to even put the chemicals in. They were putting treatment chemicals in holes in the floor at the plant. And and they weren't listening to the people at the plant, listening to science. Or ignoring science tends to be our government's go-to, right? Especially if it has to do with public health or anything that's going to cost money to fix. So we've been fighting for all this time. And yes, it's been, 9.5 years. I think it's 3,459 days. That's today that Flint has not had clean, safe, or affordable water. longer for the affordability part for sure. We were already dealing with mass shutoffs, and we still are dealing with water shutoffs and folks not being able to get their basic needs met, like washing hands. And so we're still dealing with that. The solution that was brought out in September of 2015 by, the Coalition for Clean Water, along with, Virginia Tech and everything, was to replace all the infrastructure. Because basically, if you run acid through pipes coming from the water treatment plant, so if you're using more corrosive water, you're not treating the water to protect the pipes from the water and the water from the pipes, it's going to eat up the pipes. But also there was, and I talk about it, it's, there was a biofilm, sounds gross, kind of is, but it was built up over time that was inside the pipes to, again, provide a barrier between the water and the pipes. Well, that got chewed up, eaten away by the water, by the untreated caustic water, and released things into the certain things into the water, but also no longer protected those pipes. So bare metal, right? So lead, we learned that lead lines, when they're corroded, they Swiss cheese, so holes and pieces of lead get sent in. But then we found that galvanized steel, when it corrodes, it gets really rocky and chunky on the inside. And so it can trap, and then, upon any kind of things like weather changes or a heavy truck driving over, can release more lead than lead lines, which is terrifying. Actually, one of the president of the plumbers union, who has, the plumbers union has been amazing here to be so helpful. He had galvanized pipes inside his house tested at Purdue, and he had 1.5 million parts per billion of lead inside this galvanized pipe, which is horrific. So we were able to use that in a lawsuit. So fast forward September 2015, we were introduced to the Natural Resources Defense Council through the ACLU of Michigan. And we filed a petition to get, because we had also caught, thanks to Kurt Guyette, the city and state in FOIAs lying and cheating on our lead tests, which unfortunately is still happening. And it's easy to happen because they find loopholes in these really outdated laws, right? These water laws. So here we go. We find that they're lying. We ask the EPA to come in. We get no response. So we filed. So January of 2016, a lot went on. One, we had gotten Dr. Karen Weaver, former Mayor Dr. Weaver, in office, and she did exactly what she said she was going to do and declared a state of emergency, which on the local level, which then had to be pushed up to the county. So we pushed the county commissioners to also file, for a countywide state of emergency, then pushed the governor to do so, which was fun. He was forced to, because we had a lot of public support and a lot of folks, getting behind this and pressuring him then to ask for a federal state of emergency. We wished we could have had a federal disaster declaration. However, states' rights Stafford Act prevents man-made disasters from getting federal disaster support. But we did get an emergency and got bottled water and filters, and CDC came in, did a Casper study, so got that rolling. So that's what blew it up to the world, and that was in December of 2015 going into January of 2016. Then we had found out they had set up, they had used the National Guard, and the county had used prisoners. The sheriff's department had used prisoners to deliver water, but then we found out that they were also delivering warrants and snatching people up. We found out that ICE was being told where the immigrant community was getting water and was snatching up folks. And also we found out if you didn't have an ID or speak English, you were getting charged or reported to get bottled water to save yourself. So then Nayara Sharif and Desiree Dwell, along with Juani Oliveras and Art Reyes, had gotten together and did some covert missions to find out if this was true. Got it on camera. Yes, it's true. And so then we started to do a citywide canvas, and that's the birth of Flint Rising, which we had allies in the community and outside from all over coming in to help us go door to door, knock on all 37,000 and change doors to find out what's going on, make sure people had proper, documentation, proper health information, proper filters. So basically, long story short, the poison folk jumped in to take care of the poison folk, because that's what Flint is. We are strength. We are stubborn. We refuse to give up and die. So here we are, 8 years later, 8.5 years later, since January 2015, some longer, 9.5 years into this, and we're still fighting. And what's interesting is we're still fighting, but those who are responsible are still finding new ways to inflict harm on Flint residents. It's if they put this much effort in to fixing what they broke, just the most simple of things that you should do. The most simple of human things. If you break something, we're taught this as kids, right? If you break it, you buy it. Stores say that. You break it, you buy it. Okay, well, you broke the plumbing, distribution mains, the pipes in the streets that are coming to our homes, the service lines, dishwashers, water heaters, skin, body, hair, brains, organs, bones, businesses. You decided to privatize our water to make money, to say you're saving money to pass the benefits on to us, although our water bills went up for your money saving. You're not really good at business there. One tough nerd, which is the former governor's slogan. And so we are demanding that they absolutely replace all of the infrastructure that they damaged, not just the service lines. Now, our Safe Drinking Water Act lawsuit covers the service lines that, bring the water to our house, and only the service lines, unfortunately, because our laws are outdated. So, slap in the face and a wake up call to everybody. So we are currently in the phase of updating the federal lead and copper rule. The new rule should be released in the next month or so, which, by the way, I'm going to get y'all to help, because we're going to do public statements and public comment on the law and what needs to still be changed and updated, because at this point, none of them are health protective. 2018, we did this, and the state of Michigan passed the strongest lead and copper rule. Still not good enough, but it shows that we can make change, and so we're going to have to work together on that, because it is kind of not our responsibility, but it is on our shoulders, because we did blow this up for the entire world, right? So now people are like, oh, what's in my water? Well, that's a great question. And be ready for the answer. You're probably not going to want to know, but you need to. So that's things that are going on right now. That's a brief history for those who do not. I keep repeating this, doing story time with Melissa Mays, because when there's like new journalists or different people, students reaching out, asking questions, the information they've gathered off of mainstream media is not always correct. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is done by the residents. Aaron Brockovich wrote a book, which is excellent. Superman's Not Coming. For a while there in 2016, 2017, and, forever, I guess, the mainstream, you would hear that it was certain PhDs that came from outside of Flint to help us. Right. And that's who did this. That's who did the amazing, work and everything. And it's not true. It was the residents. And yeah, we have some pretty cool PhDs, that do live here locally and everything. Dr. Universe, I saw that Dr. Laura Sullivan was on, I call her Dr. Universe. And then we've got Dr. Weaver. We've got PhDs here that helped us do the work, right? And it's the residents, the regular folk. One of my favorite stories has been, while canvassing with Flint Rising, while going knocking on doors, I was let in on a snowy Sunday. I was let into a home that had five ladies that were, according to them, in their 70s. Don't look it, but sitting around playing bridge, right? They were sitting around playing cards, talking. They let me in the house. They said, "We know you. We've seen you on TV." And I'm like, "I'm sorry," but we started talking about filters, making sure they had the right information, and asking if they wanted to make some calls to the Speaker of the House, the State House, to our state reps, to, state senators, up to federal, if they want to make some calls if they had time. Well, the one thing you don't want to do is get an amazing grandmother who is furious because you've, poisoned her children and her grandchildren, her great grandbabies, and then tell her that she don't know what she's talking about. So what's interesting is that they were making calls. We were sitting there and they were leaving voicemails, but then ripping in about how it's not just lead. We don't have enough chlorine. Copper is an issue at high levels, especially for certain people who cannot process, high levels of copper. It causes problems. They were talking about the bacteria. So it was amazing to me, even through all of this exhaustive fighting mess, when you sit down and talk to Flint residents, they're going to school you on science. And that's for everybody to know outside there. Like, my background is not in any of this. It's not in politics, it's not in activism, it's not in science, any of these things, right? My background, again, is in PR and marketing and music promotion. I put on concerts and festivals, for crying out loud, that tours, all this stuff. So you actually can fall in and get in where you fit in, because there's always a spot for everybody. Now, my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Zimmerman, who was amazing, liked to remind me that probably shouldn't have slept through chemistry. He told me I shouldn't have slept through chemistry class back in high school. But look at how I'm using it now, right? Because that's not something I've ever thought I was going to use. So this means that any person, no matter what your education, your background, you can learn. We have the internets, we have each other, and we have, community education programs. You can learn. And when your life is on the line, you have to. So that's for everybody out there whose community, and there's a lot, that are facing some kind of environmental disaster, be it water, be it air, soil, and water, like in East Palestine and Ohio with the train explosion, and then East Chicago, Indiana, Chicago, Milwaukee, all of these cities that are facing, Oakland, California, all these cities that are facing, some kind of corruption that led to poisoning or contaminated water, things like that. And it's everywhere, right? Which is why when people ask me why I don't move, that's why. It's everywhere. So I'd like to sit here and fight the devil I know-ish and try to make change here than to go somewhere else and get poisoned, and that's why we reach out and we help other communities as best as we can. So all that whole history aside, I just want everyone to know that we are all in this together. Us regular folk are in this together. And I see Susan, yeah, despicable how this cannot be resolved, a humanitarian issue, a concentration camp without walls. And it is. It is in that way. It's a way to get rid of folks. And even if it's not on purpose, they're like, oh, we're going to sit here and poison Flint residents until they die off. They surely didn't do anything when they found out what was happening. Now, this leads me to my current issue. If anybody watched the news this week, and they're little blips, by the way, and a lot of people don't know this. So there's been criminal cases. They were started in 2016 because of the call and push of the residents that what was done to us and what's being done to us is criminal. Because if you or I poisoned one person, our backsides would be in jail. That's just the way that the law works. And you shouldn't be poisoning people. At the end of the day, you should not be poisoning people. So don't do that, right? But apparently, if you're in office, if you're the governor, or if you're the governor's right-hand man like Richard Baird, or if you are in the Department of Environmental Quality and you lie and cover up that people are being poisoned, if you tell people that it's all in their head, or, you do the PR move that make them look crazy. They called us bored housewives, said that we made it up, said that we put lead in our own water. If you were elected or hired to protect public health and you did the exact opposite, not only do you deserve to be fired, you should be in jail, because people have died. We had obviously a huge increase in right now there's a cancer cluster going on, and there was a 49% increase in miscarriages, a huge decrease in fertility. We have a lot of people with like myself, with seizure disorders that are not epilepsy, that when you put heavy metals into an electrical system, like our brain, it obviously causes shorts. Our bodies are not made to filter out all of these contaminants. And we've, got some research on disinfection byproducts, the carcinogens. We've got some research on bacteria. We've got some research on heavy metals, but nobody's researching what all three layered up do and what else was in our water. That's another thing too. So we know that obviously it's a problem. We've lost a lot of people, and nobody is sitting behind bars. So if you and I did it, we would be behind bars. We know this. So in 2016, there was a criminal investigation that was started, and there was doubts. We had a lot of doubts because it was, the Republican governor's Republican attorney general, right? And is this person going to investigate? Well, he went ahead and hired, because there were problems. We pointed out that there were major issues with the fact that the same office, the attorney general's office, that is supposed to be investigating the injustices done to Flint residents by state officials, they're also protecting the state officials in court against our Safe Drinking Water Act case to get the pipes replaced, and our civil cases to get monetary compensation, the $12, the little bit of money to, we can use to hopefully replace plumbing in our homes and maybe get tutors. We'll see. We'll see how much we get. But nobody's getting rich in Flint except for the people that's done the poisoning. And they don't live in Flint, so it makes it easier, I guess. Now, we brought up the fact that the same office, you can't protect the same people that you're prosecuting, right? That doesn't make sense. So he hired a special prosecutor outside of the Attorney General's office to investigate. And this was Special Prosecutor Todd Flood, who had hired a team of folks that, again, made this not a political issue, because it's not. I mean, politicians and politics and legislation and corporate greed and, politicians that are owned by corporations cause this, but it's a human issue, like exactly what Susan said. It's a humanitarian issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a public health issue. It should not be a political issue. So he hired, Todd Flood to get in and start investigating. And what, impressed me was everything was out in the open. As for the hearings and all that stuff and the filings, but also there's several of us there's a lot of us that Todd Flood and his team reached out to through our attorneys, which is the proper way to do it, through our attorneys to interview us and look at our evidence. Dr. Sullivan and I were stuck on the side of the road. One of the times we went to the governor's office to take a map that What Are You Fighting For? We had started and did a bootleg epidemiological study, going around going to the different churches and community meetings starting in early 2015 to ask people, hey, what's your water like? What's it look like? Have you had, your lead tested? Have you had bacterial issues? Have you been sick? And then created a map and marked that, down where these issues are. And at the time, it was to prove that it wasn't just one person's house and it wasn't just one area. It was a widespread problem, right? Across the board with the water. And so, we took it to the governor's office, got ignored multiple times. But Todd Flood and his team came and collected our evidence and used our evidence to build a case and to talk not only about the poisoning of Flint, but the reasons behind it. So the banks and investors for the Karagandhi Water Authority, or currently called Genesee County Drain Commission water, a more regionalized privatized pipeline that was being built with our $300 million to run parallel to our current Detroit line. And it was going to be less regulated. It was going to be raw water piped 70 miles instead of being treated at the source. Like as soon as the water's pulled up, it's treated and then piped clean water to the communities. That's what Detroit does, and pretty much every other water treatment system in the United States. But ours, this Karagandhi Water Authority that Flint was paying the majority of construction for. So when people say Flint's broke, no, they found $300 million, but that's a fraud. That's a whole different thing. Anyway, so piping this untreated water all the way to our completely dilapidated, outdated water treatment plant that did not get updated as it should, and then sent to that was the plan. So they could sell off raw water, so untreated water, to General Motors for their car parts, so they wouldn't have to spend the money to remove the treatment chemicals like chlorine, because they broke. And for fracking and for other purposes that none of which help Flint residents or humans, right? So none of it's helpful. So that was the scheme. And that was why they said, okay, we need a split from Detroit. The Karagandhi Water Authority pipeline wasn't finished yet. And so it's okay to put Flint on the interim on the Flint River, which hadn't been used in decades because it's contaminated, but also it's way harder to treat a river in northern states because of farm runoff, road salt, because it gets a little slippery for several months here, as well as a river changes quality a lot faster because of weather, temperature changes, because it's not a large body of water and it's moving quicker. So it's harder to treat, especially if you have a broken water treatment plant. So these things were known. They did this, they knew it. So then, the whole investigation was like, okay, we got to go after the banks. We got to go after the investors, the people that okayed Flint being poisoned and being sent this, disastrous water for profit, And anyway, Long story short, there ended up being 59 charges against 15 people working up the line to flip to, and then now we've seen in documentation that this team, the special prosecution team, was working on charges against Governor Snyder, like actual serious ones. But then in 2018, it was election time, and we were promised by current Governor Whitmer, who Gretchen Whitmer, and Attorney General Nessel, who ran on Justice for Flint, right? So we started hearing rumors around September. So a couple months before the election, that Rhonda, I see your comment. Yeah, no, you'll never trust water again. Yeah, and why should we? It's still going through contaminated pipes, but we'll get to that. So but absolutely, and we have to do what's safe, and we can't really trust the people that continue to lie to us. So and send us, water through bad pipes, and yeah, broken pipes and broken promises. That should be a theme. Somebody write that down. So both are bad. So here we go. We hear that she's going to run, but then we hear she's going to replace Todd Flood because he's a Republican. She didn't like Republican and whatever. And we're like, wait a second. At this point in time, he's been working almost, it's like 2.5, almost 3 years on this criminal investigation, and it was moving forward. And here we go. This is not a political thing. So at the time, I was the chair of the Environmental and Energy Caucus for the Michigan Democratic Party. And so we requested a meeting. All the candidates who were running as Democrats, if we request a meeting, you have to come meet with the caucus. So our whole slate was very, very progressive. And they wanted to know about the Flint water crisis, but also about Line 5 and promises to shut it down, a lot of environmental issues, and concerns, right? So she blew us off, refused to, you're not supposed to do that. Because, of course, my questions were, we've heard this, are you going to do this? And then we heard, no. It was, people that were sent, no. Then, of course, we find out that, yeah, absolutely. All of the folks had been working with the community for about 3 years, going in once, she won, Attorney General Nessel won. Bam, 2019, we're hearing that Todd Flood is fired. The entire research team is fired except for one person. And the thing is that then around June rolls around and I get a call from a New York Times reporter that I had talked to before several times. And he said, hey, how you doing? And, he texted me and I was like, I'm working, going crazy, what's up? In my daytime job, I am a social worker in mental health here. And so it's a lot. So, hey, when somebody asks how I'm doing, you're going to get this kind of face, right? So he said, are you sitting down? And I'm like, what? No, but I'm gonna now you got to tell me what's up. And he was like, you didn't hear, did you? So then he calls me because then it's no longer a text conversation. And he tells me that the Attorney General's office had just tossed out. And this was literally like the night before there was hearings because two of the defendants were being bound over for trial for manslaughter. So actual big people charges, right? Actual real charges because people are dead. And so, it gets tossed out. And I scream some expletives very loudly across my office and just sat down in fury. And my question was, what about the people whose family members are dead? Did they contact them and let them know? Or are they going to find out through the media? And that's exactly what happened. They found out through the media. They were not told. They were not apologized to. And actually, our mayor at the time, which was Dr. Weaver, didn't know, found out the way the rest of us did. And there was no reasons. They refused for 3 weeks to answer any questions from the media, answer any questions from Flint residents until they held a town hall, which again, our mayor wasn't even in town for, and they didn't, work with the administration at the time to make sure that it was a proper meeting and people were there. And when I went, I ended up going, it was state police cars marked in the parking lot. It was packed. So it was very unnerving. very uncomfortable, very unnerving. So folks who maybe had, parking tickets or had, anything out there, or folks who, immigrants, even people who were citizens and working their, or residents and working their way towards citizenship avoided, like kept driving. People were terrified to go. And, it's probably a good thing they didn't, because it was a waste of time. They lied. And I'll say that clear out. They lied and said that there were documents they had just found. Wrong. Their, electronics that were just found. No, had already been copied and put into evidence. They made it literally seem up on stage as they were sitting up there talking down to us, which is always great for optics, right? PR brain. That they couldn't explain it to us. They were just gonna, I'm waiting for Adam to put this in here because he always reminds us that they said, we're gonna look at the evidence. We're gonna follow the evidence, see where it leads us, but refused to answer any questions. And so then it became, time for public questions. And Dr. Sullivan got up and asked some questions. And Dr. Sullivan was on, the stand testifying multiple times. And she got yelled at like a child. Fadwa Hammoud yelled at her. So that's the handpicked by Attorney General Nessel, Fadwa Hammoud, Solicitor General. This woman had not been a practicing attorney. She was on the board at Henry Ford Hospital. And I had a journalist from Detroit ask me if I could get up there and ask a question, which I did, and said, have you ever taken a criminal case to trial? And the answer is no. It was zero. And if so, what was the outcome? And then my second question was, have you ran on, the whole theme was justice for Flint, and you keep promising that justice delayed is not justice denied. Have you spoken to Flint residents and asked us what justice means to us? Because I don't think your definition of justice means the same as ours. And I got screamed at. She actually yelled at me and said, I've called you and you didn't answer. You don't return my calls, which, by the way, would be a violation. You have to go through my attorneys to talk to me. And then I kind of was trying to bring that up. And then she said, well, I called your attorneys. They didn't answer. Well, several of my attorneys were in the audience and stood up and said, no, that's not it at all. That's not what happened. So here we go. Fibbing. So then it got yelled at, and, I enjoy that. And I know Dr. Sullivan enjoyed that. But yeah, so we're going to follow the evidence and see where it leads. But I mean, here we are. Now, looking at what then happened is, and they refiled charges, so gave people hope. I was not one of those peoples with the hope. And they used a one-man grand jury, which has been used for, 100 years against Black and brown folk, where a judge, a one person, can, they take the evidence to them and present the case, and they can issue, indictments, but not press charges. Or they can take indictments to the one-man grand jury and have them authorize the charges. They can't do both. Well, Hammoud and Kim Worthy and Nessel's team decided to do both, which is a violation of the constitutional rights of the very people that should be facing justice for, making the decisions and acting or not acting, covering up, letting people be poisoned and die, right? So then the cases get tossed. But then on top of that, they didn't use what's called, and it's hilarious name, what's called a taint team. So what you do is they in 2019, they had filed, they had gone in and issued a warrant to go to the state offices of, Eagle, which used to be Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. They renamed it, rebranding. Doesn't always work. They went in and gathered up all these documents, not having a taint team review it to pull out things that were protected by, attorney-client privilege, like documents about Detroit's bankruptcy. Now, they are connected because bankrupting Detroit is one of the reasons they got Flint off of Detroit's water system. But as for these charges and the scope of the warrant, you know. So again, not an attorney. I have a lot of them. Been sitting in court. I'm in a lot of lawsuits. Watched a lot of Law and Order. Also know how to use Google. These are no's. If you were any kind of attorney, you would know. You have to protect a client. You have to make cases stick. You must do it right. And you must follow proper procedure and protect constitutional rights, even of the accused, right? That's the only way you're going to get justice for the victims. Well, I guess we don't care about any of that, right? So they barreled through it. And so this past week, Not only have the charges been tossed out, and then, you know, Attorney General Nessel and Fadwa Hammoud then went to the Michigan Supreme Court and tried to appeal and say, no, can we continue forward with this stuff that we've already destroyed? Like, the evidence is useless, can't be used. You've completely tainted the entire investigation. And now we're well past these statute of limitations for the misdemeanors, which were the basis of the cases. But they're doing it, in my opinion. And again, everybody, this is my personal opinion. So, you know, I'm not representing the attorneys. I'm not representing, you know, Flint Rising or any of this stuff. What are you fighting for? Yeah, because we can be jerks. But, and I can speak for my group, right? So I can speak for something I found. I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. So we'll just do that. But in my opinion, and the opinion of many other people I know that know law, beyond watching Law and Order, no, it's an act. So continuing to refile these charges, or try to, it's an act. When they threw them in the trash can and then they decided to pull pieces back out and, you know, go through the, not even bother to protect, you know, attorney-client privilege, which is, you know, attorneying 101. And then they used the one-man grand jury. They did everything possible to completely, you know, just decimate these cases, which my heart goes out to, you know, Todd Flood, Noah Hall, the whole team that have worked on this, to watch their work. You know, they basically lived in Flint for a couple of years to work on this, just trashed, right? And so then to add, you know, and of course, going back and forth, they're like, oh, well, we blame the Michigan Supreme Court for not taking the appeals and blah, blah. No, you broke the law, basically. Hello. But this goes to what Rhonda said in the comments. They have different laws for the bigwigs, because if you or I poison one person, absolutely. And this is what we all know. We would have been in prison right away. During this time, Attorney General Nessel prosecuted a husband, who put like sleeping meds in his wife's coffee. He was trying to poison her. Didn't work. She didn't get hurt, thank goodness. But he got slapped with charges. Okay, well, you know, people are dead in Flint, and people are permanently damaged, changed, altered. Our immune systems are altered. And yet these people were going to face charges. And that's the worst part, is knowing, because we always had doubts because of what Rhonda just said. We always had doubts that that these wealthy government folk would ever face charges, right? We always had doubts. But then we saw it happening, and it was moving forward, and we're like, oh my goodness, justice for Flint. It means our bodies, our lives mean something. You can't poison Flint residents. Oh my goodness. Well. So I'm going to put this document up, see if it works. Fingers crossed. Oh, Melissa can do some things. And this here is, so what this is the document that just came out, and a decision by the judge, by Judge Tucker, that not only did they violate attorney-client privilege, they have to pay, the Attorney General's office was held in civil contempt and have to pay the attorney's fees for former Governor Rick Snyder, who did this to us, right? Who was in charge and said, January 2016, the buck stops with me, except if he has to pay for this. So basically his attorneys went through and, they pointed out that the attorney-client privilege had been violated, and the Attorney General's office, the judge stated that, that they're going to have to pay, right? They're going to have to pay the attorney's fees of former Governor Rick Snyder for their actions. My goodness gracious. And Z, we're working on that. This is just me trying some stuff. My show's on the urban news station. And so, but this is just me trying out my stuff and doing the community stuff. And it would be great to get a bigger audience. So please, by the way, everybody share this out, because everybody needs to know what's happening in Flint and needs to see what to do if and when this happens to you. So here we go. Our rights being violated. Nobody's received a penny. No residents have received a penny of the civil cases. Our service lines that were supposed to be finished and removed and replaced at no cost to us in 2020, We settled in 2017, March 20th, 2017. And the city, state, and federal government, we all agreed that this was going to happen in 3 years. And towards the end of 2019, there was Dr. Weaver, 27,000 holes that were replaced, so that were dug and pipes replaced, inspected, replaced, and all that stuff. And then a new mayor was voted in, and starting in 2020, the work was stopped. Now, COVID did stop it for 6 months. We talked about it, 6 months wait, but also restoration, which is the yards, streets, and driveways and sidewalks. Yeah, so that that was supposed to be done. It was supposed to be done in 2020, and we had all worked really hard on it, and he put a stop to it. The current mayor, Sheldon Neely, put a stop to it. And so here we are in 2023, and it's not done. So I think somebody had estimated there was like 700 holes that had been dug since the end of 2019, so 2020. Nothing was done in 2021 or 2022 until we had to threaten to go back to court. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is that, one, we did see that Attorney General Dana Nessel is being held in contempt and, in civil contempt, and has to pay these fees. So unfortunately, that's our tax dollars. So we in Flint have to pay for the attorney, even more for the Attorney General's weaponized incompetence. I think that's the term now. Basically, like, hey, we tried, but oopsies, our bad, that kind of thing. We dropped the ball, and they're trying to act like the victims in all this, which of course they're not. They should know better. I'm sure there's a wiki how on how to do attorneying or law school. Yeah, you could have gone to law school. But again, the Attorney General is the highest legal mind in the state. So, you should know what you're doing, right? And so I can't claim that, she doesn't know what she's doing. So then what's left for me to personally say is it was done on purpose to toss these charges out. And you can see when they did refile the charges, there were the financial fraud from the KWA those charges were not refiled against the guilty parties, or supposed guilty parties, the responsible parties. So now, why we roll in to talk about this, now it is infuriating and disgusting that our tax dollars have to go to pay her for her mess ups, for the Attorney General's mess ups, and how you violated and why I have to sit here and say you violated the constitutional rights of an attorney-client privilege of the people that are responsible for poisoning me. I don't want to defend these folks, right? And I don't want to pay for we were already paying, I think it said in 2022, we were up to $53 million that was spent on the criminal cases. That's an expensive trash can, right? Like, to throw $53 million tossed in the trash, like, not even because of a bad judge or a bad decision this way. Now, is it fair and right that the one-man grand jury was okay for Black and brown people for 100 years, but it's not okay for some rich old white people? No, that's not okay. But if it was okay for Black and brown people for 100 years, why can't it be okay for a rich old white dude? If it's wrong, it's wrong. So now we got to go, now the Attorney General has opened a can of worms, and you violated how many people's rights? But right now we're talking about Flint, so it's our rights, and we have to pay. We've had to pay for Snyder. We've had to pay for the Attorney General's and her Solicitor General, Fadwa Hamoud's, who, by the way, got a promotion. Let's put that out there. She failed upwards and got a promotion up the line to, I think, Deputy Attorney General. And then also last week there was a statement put out that Fadwa Hamoud was like Woman of the Year for the Michigan Bar Association or something like that. Oh my goodness. So I threw a fit, put it out there that, she's the most influential woman. Well, yeah, because there's a lot of people that were freed, got poisoned, and, that poisoned people, and, were able to go free. So that's an influence, I guess. And yeah, just like Eden Wells, that is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Dr. Weaver, Eden Wells, who was the state's doctor. Okay, she was appointed, got a 6-figure salary to be the top doctor in the state. Said it's not her responsibility to protect public health. What does a doctor do then? What is that? And especially admitting this and saying it out loud. I mean, so she got charged. She was one of the people being bound over for trial for manslaughter because you're a doctor. And she said, it's not my job to protect public health. So then, even while being charged, she got to stay in her job comfy little six figures. What in the world? So you fail upwards, you get a raise, you get a promotion, you get a bonus, you get six figures and you see no, accountability whatsoever. And yes, and Dr. Sullivan, I have been asking around for advice for people who'd be willing to help us. People of Flint versus the Office of the Attorney General for incompetence and bringing criminal defendants to trial. Absolutely, because there's in my mind, and I'm not sitting here saying I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but in my mind, just living through this, there's no way that this was accidental or just bad luck or this. You tossed out perfectly good, solid cases that, okay, maybe they weren't perfect because nothing ever is, but the judges thought they were to where they could be bound over for trial, and they actually did it proper, with a grand jury, with, not just one man behind closed doors. Their evidence and their case was strong enough to where a grand jury said, yeah, indict these people. And then it was being moved forward to trial. So it was strong enough. But instead of coming in and becoming the heroes and, keeping the current, because we begged for the current, the special prosecution team to stay because they knew what they were doing. And the Flint water crisis is not as simple as, well, Flint needed money, so they switched this source and things went bad. It's not that simple. It's because of a privatized pipeline. It's because of corruption. It's because of promises here with the cover up. That's why there were RICO cases. And by the way, where are the RICO cases? Does anybody know? Because they were charging Snyder and, with RICO charges, which means they conspired and made money while committing a crime and harming us. Okay, so where'd that go? So when all this got tossed in the trash, what is going on? So what I would like to say is, well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and poison a whole bunch of people, and I will cite this as my permission to do so, except I have a soul, so I'm not going to do that. Not that I don't think about it, but no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not a garbage human like the responsible parties are. And I actually care about my fellow folks. And, also just know, and I don't know how these people live with themselves, but of course I think you have to have a conscience, and I'm sure they sleep at night very well, and I bet them pay off money. I don't know. Again, my personal opinion, that's my personal thought on it. Anyway, the only positive out of this is that a judge just held a government official in contempt. All right, then. So I don't know if anybody, if people are familiar with last October, November, so the Natural Resources Defense Council, ACLU of Michigan, and all of the plaintiffs, myself included, and all of us, because the Safe Drinking Water Act case, the pipe removal case, represents all of us in Flint. The city, the mayor, the city administration, and they have not completed their obligations. They were ordered we had to hold them for the fifth time in violation of the settlement agreement. And then in February of this year, the Judge Lawson, federal judge, had told them they needed to have inspections done because they also said they had no idea how many service lines had been changed and how many properties had been restored, which, oh my goodness. Which they tried saying that, former Mayor Weaver actually burned all the records. So I guess, Dr. Weaver burned the internet too. That's what you do, I guess, is you blame the previous person and take no responsibility for anything, I guess. But also, so the judge had told them they had ordered the city to complete inspections. So to go to door and to mark off which homes were done, which ones were not, by May 1st. And then to have the excavations completed by August 1st. Well, May 1st came around, it was not done. The inspections were not done. And they weren't even doing the inspections properly per the settlement agreement. There were 7 parts, like make sure that the water shutoff's not sticking up, making sure that the sidewalks aren't a hazard, the road's not a hazard, and to make sure the ground had been leveled. So basic common sense stuff, right? They weren't even doing that. My house, we told them they had to go hang a door hanger and tell people if they thought. They had to take pictures and say, we think the work here is done. If you don't agree, you can call an email. So that was something that we had demanded, that they, let residents know they'd been there and they think it's done. They went to my house where I have a huge sinkhole in my front yard, and my water shutoff was sticking up way high and broken because somebody had parked on It's because it was sticking up, and said it was done. It's my house, man. It's my lawsuit. Really? So my whole street. So we went taking pictures, all this stuff. So we ended up going back to court. Come to find out in court that the city hadn't even told the engineering firms to go ahead with these inspections until May 13th, which is after May 1st. I'm not a calendar creator, but it's after that. So they had then said, oh, we're done. Everything's going to be done and done by August 1st. No, holes are still being dug. While part of me is happy that people are still getting, because we do not want to leave any lead behind. The whole point of all this was to get all the lead and galvanized steel service lines replaced. But of course, we're still going to have problems because the mains and the interior plumbing are corroded, and our mains rupture like at record, numbers every year. But it's a start, right? It's a start. And this is part of a piece of justice. So they violated the mayor, the city administration had violated the judge's orders from February and hadn't complied, did not complete things. And so they weren't taking it seriously either. So we've been going back and forth trying to negotiate, like, come on, we want this done. We should be on the same team here as for getting the lead out and getting this done so everybody can move forward, so we can focus on the next thing. And as, of course, the longer the construction hangs out, the longer the system's going to be shaken up, which means the longer that contaminants are going to be released into our water, right? So, they didn't do it. They didn't meet the deadline. So we had to file to request that the federal judge hold the mayor and the city administration in contempt of court for violating his order. So, do we want to do that and have the fines come out of our taxes? Oh, goodness, no. Do we want to have to do this, period? Not at all. But what else are we going to have to do to get these elected officials to take us seriously and to do the work that was promised? To do the bare minimum, at least, and none of that's being done. So here we are, 3 years past the due date for it to be finished, waiting to see if the judge is going to hold them in contempt. But also, they missed the August deadline for excavations, so the actual digging to be done. So here we are. So that is my update on that. We are still waiting. We're still waiting on data from the city. We are still, waiting to see what's going on. I just want everybody to hop to it, because we need to push the city and the state to file to have the wind fund. So the water infrastructure money that came from former President Obama. So that's how many presidents ago? Right before he left office, he signed wind fund money, which was $170 million. That, of course, went to the EPA to grant to the state to pay for water infrastructure updates, right? It almost expired last year, but we happened to catch that, hey, why are you letting this money expire? And then trying to say you don't have money to finish the pipe replacement and restoration plan. Well, that last count, the letter from the EPA stated that there's $17 million of unspent wind funds, and this is what they're there for. And the city hasn't even completed the application to, extend it, to get an extension to use this money. So if you guys want something to push on right now, it is that. It is to push Mayor Neely and the city administration and the state, so Eagle, to extend the wind fund. Put the application in to extend the wind money, the federal money. Otherwise, that's $17 million that's going to waste. So, and yes, John, I agree with you. John says that Neely and the governor and Dana Nessel are working together. It's against the people. It's all a scam. Yeah, it seems to be, that they're all just, well, the state is turning a blind eye, or trying to where, and Mayor Weaver can attest to this. When she was in office, anything that the city didn't do right with the pipe replacement or the water bills, statements, former Governor Rick Snyder's right-hand man, Rich Baird, told me to my face in front of all my attorneys and theirs that we in Flint were not grateful enough for the little that they did. And that's why they shut the water pods, the points of distribution sites where people could go pick up bottled water. That's why they shut them down, because we weren't grateful enough for the little crumbs they were giving us. And God forbid you speak up or speak out or let them know, or let the public know, like they had told Dr. Weaver, the former governor had told her to get over it. He wanted to talk about economics, not water. So, of course, that was going to be bad. So then we have a mayor currently, and in my opinion, is just sitting back, letting everything fall apart and not doing anything to protect the people that, supposedly elected him to protect them and to do what was right by us. However, he's working awfully hard to appoint people on city council that will toe his line no matter what, and give $72 million to a contractor to clean up the Buick City site, but not worry about finishing the service line replacements or anything like that. Of course, this company also donated $11,000 mowers to city council members, cash, gifts, things like that, which is against the city charter, but who's holding them responsible? So right now, the hope is that the federal judge will hold the mayor and city administration in contempt. Do I want to pay for their failures like we're having to pay for Attorney General Dana Nessel's failures? And can you call it a failure if it's on purpose? Like if it's an accident, that's one thing, but and it, could be forgivable. This is, to me personally, on purpose, because you know how to do your job, I would assume. And these people are just going to continue to fail upwards and work up the political ladder. So we as voters need to, we need better people to run. We need people to run against these folks that are not the lack of quality that was in the last election. These candidates were terrible. And that are not going to destroy our rights or anything else to make our lives worse. We need people that are going to protect public health and to look out for the most vulnerable. That should be what you do, not for who's giving you the most money. So now, a couple of to-dos. I know I've been talking for a while. I can always tell if I talk my lip gloss off. I'm like, oops. So what we need to do is, one, talk to one another. I'm always telling us that as long as we stick together and share the facts, share the data, the information, the links, and all of this, that we can move mountains. We have before. And yes, it is always an uphill battle. It is always, a biblical David versus Goliath type of story, but we've done it before. So I just want to remind everybody, Flint has done it before. We have changed history on, an international level, right? And we have worked really hard to win these lawsuits, good or bad, and to push these things forward up against, the government, which nobody's ever done. We've made history by winning these lawsuits, and we continue to have to babysit them, of course, because, money's money. And yeah, Neely does think he's above the law because he's in the pockets of, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that nobody is above the law. Nobody should be able to go out and poison one person, let alone 100,000 plus, right? And get away with it. Doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. So we need to remind folks of this. So we have to vote. We have to, look for good candidates, people who are okay up here, but also understand the job that they would be running for. Like, I don't feel we have a state rep right now. The mayor's disappearing on purpose, so that letting the state, letting us fall apart. Every once in a while throw some gasoline on the fire, so that way the state can come take control of us. So we need to stop that. Okay. But also we need to change the law. So we have a lot of responsibility that we need to do. Impeachment time, that would be a recall on this level. And honestly, I don't know how that wouldn't be possible, because I don't know any good that's been done. Because crime is not down. The water's not better. We like I said, not too long ago, we had somebody test it 14,450 some odd parts per 14,000 parts per billion of lead, which lead's not the only most dangerous contaminant in our water, but 5,000 is hazardous waste. The only safe level is 0. Now, we need to use our experience and continue to tell our stories. So we have to make sure we're sharing stories, we're sharing information out, we're sharing ways to get help, to look out for one another, but also to make sure the facts are out there. No drama, just facts. This is what's happening to us, and this is what we need people from the outside to know and to do to help us, to share our stories, and to help us with the federal lead and copper rule. We need to get our voices in there, because our experience is priceless. Our expertise on living and fighting through this is priceless. We are the experts here. So we need to raise that on a federal level. So we'll talk more about that when it comes out, when they issue their rule, and we'll say, okay, everybody, time to write letters, make calls. Let's do this, like we did for the state lead and copper rule. We need to be reaching out to the mayor's office and our city council people who are not, there's some people that are just not doing their jobs. Anyway, that's a whole other episode. So this one is going to be, we need to, so apparently a recall can happen a year after the election. So either November or January. I've heard different things. I'm not sure, but be looking out for that, because at this point, I also found out that there's no term limits for mayor in Flint. I don't want to go personally. I can't see us falling apart for another 4 years and then 4 years of that, 4 years of that. No, it's not okay. It's not acceptable. So we need people that are not about drama, that are for the people, that will take care of the people and look out for public health and do what's right and not violate the responsible party's constitutional rights to where we have to get out there and defend it and say, well, you violated that person's rights, even though that person is responsible for the poisoning of Flint. It's gut wrenching. It's heartbreaking. And yeah, but we can feel sad. We just have, and angry and all these things, but we have to filter them into actions. So just, keep up with us. We are going to continue to do this. My name is Melissa Mays. I'm a Flint resident, Flint mother. I run What Are You Fighting For? I'm operations manager at Flint Rising, and I'm also a social worker in mental health here in Flint. But I want to thank the Urban News Station for helping to amplifying and letting me do this show and encouraging me to do this on a weekly basis. To have y'all wonderful, beautiful people spend your Saturday afternoons with me to talk about, look at all the things that are going wrong, and here are the people responsible. But we can make a change because we have. And we will, because we have to. And Flint's amazing. So again, we're going to keep getting to learn this Saturdays. I'm going to continue to do this as long as I have a platform and y'all put up with me. And thank you all for being here with me and talking about what's going on in Flint. And please share. And if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. We'll put links. And then, throughout the week, just let me know. Let me know if you've got questions, and make sure you join the Urban News Station group to see other amazing people of Flint that are putting out information, good information for Flint residents. No drama, just straight facts, news you can use. Basically, it's what it is. But again, I just want to thank you all so much for joining me and talking to one another and sharing this out. And I will see you guys next Saturday. And again, next week, let's talk about what's going on in Flint. Have a great Saturday.